America's Treasury Chief has a problem. We are talking about Secretary Bessent, not with inflation, not with interest rates, but with India doing business. So US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has slammed the India-EU free trade deal, accusing Europe of choosing commerce over conscience and trade over Ukraine. Strong words, but let's pause and fact-check the outrage. Because while Bessent says Europe has compromised its principles, the truth is far less dramatic and far more global. First, Europe never stopped supporting Ukraine. EU nations continue to fund Kiev, supply weapons, impose sanctions on Russia, and host millions of Ukrainian refugees. What they have also done is something far less controversial. They have continued doing business. From China to India to the Gulf, European economies are recalibrating supply chains, protecting growth, and hedging risk. In fact, Germany, France, Italy, and Spain are all expanding trade ties outside the Russia-Ukraine theatre, even as the war drags on. Supporting Ukraine has not meant switching off the economy. Now, to Bessent's second charge that Europe is buying refined fuel from India, that too made using Russian crude, that is true, but it is also legal under Western sanctions. But remember, India is already phasing out its purchases of Russian crude. Once Russian oil is refined in a third country, it is no longer classified as Russian. The US knows this. Europe knows this, and Washington has never sanctioned India for it. In fact, American companies have purchased the same refined products. So, the moral outrage is only selective and directed towards India. Then comes the tariff argument. Secretary Bessent says Europe refused to match the US's additional 25% tariffs on Indian goods. That is also true. But that is because Europe is not the United States. While Washington chose protectionism, Brussels chose partnership. While the US raised walls, Europe opened markets. And the result is the so-called mother of all deals, giving Indian exporters near zero tariff access to Europe. So what's really bothering Washington? Not Ukraine, not oil, not principles. It's that Europe chose New Delhi over Washington's pressure. Because in today's multipolar world, alliances are political, but trade is practical. And while the US lectures, the EU is science.